Hello, heroines, and welcome back for another super interview. Today, I could not be more excited to have Savannah Grace with us. The lovely, the one and only, the awesome, the passion heart catalyst is in the house. Welcome, Savannah. How are you?
Oh my goodness. Thank you, Alex. You're amazing. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited that you're here. So let's start it. Keep it simple. Tell us who Savannah is.
Of course. So I'm over here in California and I am an identity, a relationship, and a trauma coach. And I teach men and women how to find their own royal divine birthright and maybe even discover and find each other.
Very nice. I like that. And so, outside of your passion, right, and how you serve your community, um, what makes you you?
My goodness. What makes me me is I have like this young side. I don't look, sound, or act my age, and so I have like a Peter Pan spirit that you just cannot kill for nothing. And my favorite Disney person in the world was Tinkerbell, so I think that says it all. And so I just have this it's almost like I choose as an adult, we can all do our thing, but I choose to have an innocent joy. And so I really enjoy that part about me.
And you know what? It shines through every time you and I have been together on any calls. It's just that's what comes through. So you're very congruent with who you are. So that's awesome.
Thank you.
So you're welcome. So, how did you come about doing the work that you do?
Well, it was a journey, Alex. Actually, I started in my coaching business 3 years ago, and I actually was an author coach because I actually wrote a book called The Runaway Man: A Journey Back to Hope. And it was a book that has so much pieces of my personal life, and you don't see it when you're in it. You're just writing this book. And so, Dean and Tony, I came from, that fruit, and they said, pick the low hanging fruit. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'm an author, so I'm going to be an author coach. And it just didn't align with me. I wasn't getting the people that I could really serve, and people were not taking seriously, what I have to offer and what I have is to value, what I have to offer as them seeing me as value. I'm nervous right now, Alex, so I'm getting through this. Yeah.
Take your
But
time,
little
we're
by
in no
little,
rush.
I love it. But little by little, I like discovered myself. And when I decided to be an identity coach, that's when the real work came in. And I started seeing so much, goodness that I can give the world with my own personal trauma that I've gone through and my triumphs that I've accomplished in that time period. And so, you kind of got to go backwards to go forward. And so I came from an abusive husband that was a drug addict and cheating. And like I like to tell people, I said, I left him in the middle of the night with strangers. And that always gets people like curious of what I mean by that. And they were strangers to me, but not to the people I trusted. And it was this really, really amazing story where I was really at my wits' end. I really was going to leave him, but I didn't know how. I'm a spiritual person, and so I prayed and I called my God Papa God. And I was smoking back then, and I was smoking at the park, trying to get away from him and just have some space because he was not a good person to be around. And I was praying and I said, Papa God, I said, I want you to take my husband, but I can't deal with him the way he is. I love him, but I can't be a part of this world with him. He was unfaithful, he was a cheat, he put me in crutches for 2 weeks. He dragged me
Oh my
around by
God.
my ankles. Yeah, right. He put me up against a wall. He said, I can snap your neck if I wanted to. There was just a lot of darkness there. And in that time period I prayed this prayer and I said, but I can't be here, when you change him, kind of a thing. Well, 2 weeks later, we were living with he tricked me. We started in Las Vegas and we were supposed to like stay there. But then he said, we're going to go to California to visit family, and we ended up staying there. And so it was like I was really ostracized at that point, in that time period that we were there. We were there for quite a long time, and his mom was there at one point, and I was trying to tell the mom, hey, your son's on drugs and stuff, and nobody was listening to me. And so, at the time period that all this happened, I was actually in my room, and his sister-in-law had her high school friend, show up, and they were visiting. And so they said, well, we want to see the wife. We want to see the wife. So fast forward to the 2 weeks after that big prayer, they're showing up. I was kind of ostracized in the other room, on this big, huge house that was happening, and everybody was having this really great time. And I was staying away from everything. And they said, well, we want to see the wife. Well, they knocked on the door and they said, we see you as a light in a dark place. And we see you as a light in a dark tunnel, and we want to take you out of here. And that was like my ticket away from this thing. And so my story started transform at that moment, because I tried to leave him before. He was arrested because he had a firearm that wasn't registered, and I went to a women's shelter. But then I got sucked back into it, because you know how us women are. We do that whole stand by your man. And this is part of my relationship coach, part of me coming in now. And I say to women, I say, you don't stand by a boy, you stand by a man, and there's a difference. And so they say it takes women up to 10 times before they finally leave, you know
Wow.
and so for me, it took me about 5. And so I literally had to get pushed out the door, because I remember I went to my pastor over this, Alex. I still wasn't sold. And I heard the offer and all this stuff. And then I went to my pastor, and I talked to him, and I said, well, I want to save the marriage. I want to be this. I want to do this. I still love him and all this stuff. And there was like fog in my brain. I couldn't remember anything he said, but the one thing he said cut like glass through all the confusion. And he goes, how do you know God's not protecting you? And then
Mm.
that's what finally did it. And that gave me my walking papers. But it's even a better story, because the lady, her and her husband were driving from another sorry, I get this part always mixed up. They were flying from another state, but then when they got to California, the woman of the father's woman, we'll say Abby, we got to come up with a name. Abby, her dad gave her a car. And so her husband ended up driving all my stuff. This is crazy, to the new state where I'm safe now. And then I ended up taking his plane ticket, and I hung out with her on the airplane to get me safely out of there. So the whole story was like this huge serendipity full circle, where literally it felt like I was just like pulled out, literally pulled, just completely rescued. And so going back to my book now, The Runaway Man: A Journey Back to Hope, it's about runaways and exploited children in human trafficking. And so it's like, no, I've never gone through that piece, but I have gone through the battered wife and all that. And so when I got to that point where, I didn't know where I wanted to take my coaching, it felt so right and so like authentic that it's for me to start sharing about those darker, deeper trauma stuff, where I really can help people, and where I specifically can help women, and I can help them how to get from princess mindset to queen mindset, and how to attract their next level kings. And so there's that piece. And so there's so many of these stories that we go through. And, if we can like get on the other side of it, Alex, it's like, it's this beautiful story that literally can save lives. We just got to
Mm.
get brave and just be ourselves and share.
So there's so much in there that I want to touch on. The first thing is, because it's the thing you just said, tell us more about the princess mindset.
Of course. So I was always daddy's little girl. I'm an only child, and I was always daddy's little girl. And my father and I had a huge blowout in 2020. Can you imagine the year that everybody's like
Wow.
connecting, and then I lost everything. And so it's good in the sense that I had that fatherly, I'm going to cry in a minute. I had that fatherly love all my life, and he was my best friend and all this great stuff. So I have that love mentality of a man. But I remember because one of my heart passions is human trafficking awareness, you know. And it's like, I remember saying to people, I said, I don't understand how they can call their pimps daddy. I don't understand these
Mm,
broken daddy girls. I don't understand. I don't understand. And it was like, literally, I've gotten to walk through that mindset now. You know, not calling a pimp daddy, but the idea of a broken daddy girl. I am a recovering now broken daddy girl. And so I see that now in ladies and how that literally affects every part of people's relationship, you know, from work to spouse to boyfriends, you know, to coaches, to, you know, different family members, you know, to anybody on the male spectrum of how we're going to see ourselves, you know. And so in that time period, I started doing a lot of really deep work on heart healing and having to forgive the unforgivable and all the garbage that goes with that. And so I came up with, you know, this term called, you know, hey, princesses. And I really been pushing that hard because, you know, a lot of times, you know, the world calls women princesses, but they're entitled, you know, they're young based, you know, they're looking for a man to save them. They're looking for their Prince Charming, you know, and I try to like flip it, and I'm like, no, you are a warrior queen. You are a righteous queen. It's not all about, even though I love my bling, you know, I can be very, very um what would it be called, um minimalistic, believe it or not. And I don't need to wear makeup. I don't need to, you know, get all fancy and stuff. Like, you know, I love the nature and stuff, but it's the concept of what the queen stands for and what the king and the royalty and finding that divine birthright. And so a big part of that is those broken daddy girls. If they need to like receive who they truly are, and they are not broken. They're in recovery. And I help guide them through that stage to see that they truly are next level queens.
you know, I often say that Hollywood does us and Disney does us no favors, right? Because we grow up thinking that, you know, Prince is going to come and save us, our knight in shining armor, and all of that. And at the end of the day, it ties back to what you said to we expect, or society expects us to, for the men to save us, right? That we are
Yes.
there for the guys, but we forget that we are our own person as
We
well,
save
right?
us. We save us.
And that's the thing, because you were saying before you had that whole mentality of stand by your man,
Yes.
but who stands for us? If we
Right?
don't stand for us, nobody's going to do that for us.
Exactly.
So, in that journey, because you also talked about losing your voice, right? That you weren't, you didn't in a way speak up for yourself or speak up for what you wanted. So when you
Right.
put all of that together, how did you start rebuilding from this place of being quiet, this place of I'm expecting him to save me because that's what society believes we should do, to becoming empowered and really coming into your own? Take us through that a little bit.
Course. So the biggest thing for me was forgiveness. You know, it goes, it's crazy. It's like it goes back to my book again. Like a big spoiler in my book is that my hero has to forgive the people that murdered his family. And so, it's like you kind of walk through these things with your characters and you start saying, no, no, nobody like murdered my family. But like my father in our relationship has been murdered at this stage. I mean, it can be rebirthed and there's going to be a lot of growth, for that to happen and stuff. But the first step is forgiveness. And so it's poof, the power of forgiveness. And it's like a key that is like a locket, and it's like we have the key to our hearts, but the key to the heart is forgiveness. And until we actually take that key and unlock, we are going to have that hardened heart. But nobody else has that key. We have the key. And so that's a huge piece to this. And so that to me was my biggest growth, was to forgive the unforgivable. And that goes back to my spiritual piece. I literally had to pray that stuff off, Alex. I had to say, Papa God, help me to forgive the unforgivable. And why do I call Papa God God? Everybody has their name. I call him that because I used to call my father that. And so by calling him that, it kind of redeems me. It kind of brings back my heart. It kind of heals me in an area that nobody can touch, because he is my Papa God at this point. My Father, my Heavenly Father is my Papa. And I think each of us, we need to find our own way with our own paths. But for me, that has been my anchor through this whole thing. I would have slit my throat years ago if I didn't have my spiritual faith. And so it's just where I'm at personally. But like going back to the broken daddy girl and the princess and all that, when I was doing my YouTube, I just like had this moment and I was explaining. I'm very visual. You'll find that out about me, Alex. It's the author in me and all that. And I remember talking to the camera when I was doing my little YouTube thing. And you guys can find that because I didn't get to download everything, but I did download that one. And it's one of my favorites. And of course, it needs to be cleaned up because I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm learning as I go about how to do this YouTube thing, you guys. And it's awesome. I love it. But it's just the baby steps. But the thing that I did is I was talking about the princess mindset and how you're up on this huge castle and how you're expecting someone to come and save you, and you're looking for your Prince Charming and stuff. I said, you need to take the trauma from your past, which is the bedding, and you need to rip it in shreds, forgiveness, abandonment, rejection, all that crap. And you literally link it like a bed and like a rope, and you pull yourself out of that castle, because that castle ends up being like a prison. You know what I'm saying, Alex? And that castle could be a bed, it could be drugs, it can be pornography, it could be all the stuff. That castle can be anything. It could even be work, people workaholics. And you pull yourself off that castle, and then you come down as a righteous royal queen. And so that's the concept. And that's the kind of stuff that I go deep with my ladies, that I teach and stuff.
I love everything that you just said. I think that going back to what we were saying earlier, really taking ownership for ourselves and taking responsibility for ourselves, right? We may not, nobody invites in their lives what you went through, right? But I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like we all have the power to respond to it in a way that feels healing versus in a way that feels, for lack of a better word, not healing,
Right.
right? So for somebody who is coming out of a relationship, or whether it's a divorce or the end of a long-term relationship, how do you start that healing? Like when you ended up leaving your former husband, how did you start that for yourself?
I think the biggest thing that I did for myself is I started looking at who I really was when I was a child before I was broken, and I have that young side already, so it was really easy to go back there. And I started thinking about who I was before a man hurt me, and
Okay.
it's like, what what was my personality like? And, you know, by nature, I have a very brave side. I'm not this wallflower. And so when I was getting beat down by my man, I was fighting back. So one of my issues was is I didn't feel like I deserved to be considered be calling myself a battered spouse because like when he put me in those crutches for those 2 weeks, Alex, well, guess what I did before that? I kicked him in the nuts. You know what I'm saying? When he like dragged me by my ankles before that, I'm sorry, not the drag ankles. When he had me up against the wall and was going to slam my neck, what was it? I'm gonna snap your neck if I wanted to. That statement. Before that, I spilled hot soup in his lap. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't always this little wallflower. So part of the reason why I think it took me so long to like let go of him was obviously love at the time. But it was also because I had sold the lie that as a woman, if you fight back, then you actually are not considered a battered spouse. And that's garbage because that's the thing I want to tell the women is like, if the man hits you at all, that's a battered spouse. If you hit the man, then you're the battered spouse. So it goes both ways. And it's like a lot of times women, they get stuck with that. And because of that, they don't leave because there's this guilt, there's this shame. They're like, oh, yeah, well, I fought back. I had something to say. I mean, I like let him have it. Oh, yeah. And so because you let him have it, you end up crutches for 2 weeks. And you know what? He was so sweet, sugar sweet. When I was in crutches, he was like massaging me and all this garbage, you know, and like giving me sponge bath, not sponge baths, but like shower baths and stuff. And it's like that's what he wanted. He wanted me to be weak. And if I was weak and tame and docile, then we got along great. But as soon as this mouth came out, because I have one, you know, and if this sass came out because I'm there and I'm fiery redhead by nature, you know, once that came out, I got beat down for it, you know, and so I think that was the biggest thing that I learned is like, by nature, I'm going to be brave. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to be this person. And no man or woman, child, anybody is going to put their thumb on me. You know, it's who I was born to be. I'm born to be um somebody that can hold their own.
I can see that. And I want to go back to something you said because it triggered a thought for me, which is you said, I went back to who I was before I was a battered woman. Would you say you kind of went back to your innocence and rebuilt from there?
Beautifully said. Yes. In fact, that's crazy that you said that because in my book, in the very beginning of my book, I have a poem that's called Innocence. And it's this whole term. I mean, it has nothing to do with the book, but I really felt led to put that in my book. And it was, I don't know the full words anymore, but it says, gone are yesterday's past, hoping the sweet innocence will forever last. Gone is the wiggle of a ladybug wiggles on by, hoping the sweet innocence will, I don't know, I can't remember it. It's been too long. But the concept was all about innocence. And so it's like that is something, and it said, and the last verse was, hold on to that sweet innocence for as long as you can, for once it's lost, innocence can never be found
Mm.
again. And so that was it. And it was like, because I have made the choice to embrace my inner child, there was pieces of me that he could never touch.
And it's interesting because I feel like it's almost a dichotomy, right? Because you go back to your innocence, but at the same time, you've got this wisdom that you've acquired by because of what you've gone through. So when you put that together, it's an incredible foundation to build on.
Like a wise child. It's like you have that balance of the innocence, but yet you have the wisdom of an elder. And so those two pieces in me, I'm constantly going back and forth with, in different, parts of my life. And so there is a huge gift in that ability to be able to be a wise elder and still have that young childlike heart.
Mm, I love it. I love it. All right. Anything that we haven't talked about that you would like to mention to our
Yes.
heroines?
Yes. I have a Facebook group, you guys, that I'm relaunching, and it's called Shine TV Global, and it's all about kings and queens. And I am going to be relaunching a royal masquerade Zoom ball where you guys get to dress up, and I already got it all figured out. We got games we're gonna play. There's so much there. We're gonna talk about the deeper stuff if you guys are brave. Make sure you bring a crown because you're gonna be putting it on at the end, but you start off with a mask because you're hidden, because that's where the trauma comes from and stuff, and you're gonna little by little layer those pieces off. By the end of the night you will walk out as a royal king and queen, and you will embrace your royal divine birthright, and I would love to see you guys there.
Awesome. Awesome. That sounds good. That sounds like fun. Although I'm not a dress up person necessarily, but that sounds like fun. I always feel like, I don't know.
You
It
don't
feels,
have to,
I guess, incongruent with who I am, I guess.
right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the thinking behind it is. Anyways, Savannah, thank you so much
Oh,
for
it's
being
been so
here and
fun.
for sharing your story.